All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Amanda Mckinney, who is a recognized thought leader and coach on accidental entrepreneurship and the author of Why Not You. Amanda, how you doing?
Oh, Timmy, thank you so much for having me here today. I am so thrilled to talk to you because I just love your podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to have you, and we like to jump right in. So if you could start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Yes. Well, I've heard this several times on your podcast. And I have to say, as someone who started my own business and I love what I do, that my business is fun. So I feel like that's such a blessing and such a privilege in life that I get to have that. But other things that I like to do is I love to spend time outside. The unfortunate part is I have really bad allergies. So sometimes during the year, I can't do that. But I really love spending time outside. I love being by the water and I really enjoy reading and, of course, being around people I love.
There we go. There we go. And do you have a favorite genre to read?
Right now, it's all business books. I love entrepreneurship books, but I will say that I have always loved it since I first started reading the Harry Potter series. And so whenever I need a business break, I always go back to Harry Potter.
Really? So
Yeah.
here's my question about Harry Potter. Are the books as good as people say? Because I've watched the
I
movies,
love them.
but I haven't read the books.
I highly recommend it because there's definitely more details.
Mm.
And so I read it. It was such an interesting experience. So I was in high school. I'll tell my age at this point, but I was in high school when the books started coming out. Like I was a senior, and I think it was the second book, and it happened to be on a reading list
Mm.
for one of our classes. And we, like, all of my friends and I were like, is this really on the reading list? Like, it's a kid's book. And we were all like, absolutely, we're going to read that. It's going to be such an easy book to read. And sure enough, it was so interesting that I ended up reading the rest of them through college, which this was before iPads and Kindles. So I was walking around with those huge books,
Yeah,
like on a college campus. It was so fun. So I highly recommend it. I think they're so great.
I love it. Okay, I might have to give it a read then, I guess.
Yeah, they're really good. I think you'll enjoy it, and it kind of just takes you out of the day to day. You're running this podcast, you're doing a million other things in your life, and here that world is just so different that I mean, you know it if you've seen the movies that it's just a different world, but there's nuances that are in the book, and there's even characters that are in the book that are not in the movies.
Really, whole characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Not too many, but there are a few.
I gotcha. I gotcha. I also heard that a lot of characters had way more depth in
Yes.
books.
Yeah. You know a lot more about them. And, it's interesting. So you'll go into it. You've seen the movies. So you can picture all of these characters because you've seen them versus like when I was reading it, I was making it up. Like I was saying Hermione's name wrong the whole time I was reading it.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, awesome, Amanda. Tell us a little bit more about what you do on the day to day. What is accidental entrepreneurship? And
Mhm.
tell us a bit about the book as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for that opportunity. So, accidental entrepreneurship, I'm not the first person to coin that phrase, but what I realized is that I really attract and work with people who have started a business because they followed a passion or a hobby. And that's how I ended up saying it was an accident. Like they didn't start the business thinking, I want to start this tech startup or the entrepreneurial space that, like, if you Google entrepreneurship, you're going to get the venture capitalist information, all of that, which is fantastic. It's just a different avenue to go into entrepreneurship. So I started saying accidental, and people really resonated with it because they said, I feel like I stumbled into this. And when people feel like they stumble into it, it can take a hit on your confidence. You're not really sure what to do. But everyone that I work with said, I stumbled into it, but I want to move through it with intention. And so that's how I started talking about who I work with.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So they followed a passion or hobby, and either they got so passionate about it, they wanted to spend more time on it, or people saw
Hmm.
what they were doing and wanted a piece of it, and that's kind of how they stumbled into the business. But now they want to approach it with more intention.
Yes, you said it beautifully.
I gotcha. I gotcha. And then why not you? Tell us a little bit about
Hmm.
why you wrote that book, what it goes through.
Yes, and you're talking to me in a very fun time and also stressful time because I'm in the middle of launching this book. So the book is not completely out at the time of this recording. I don't know when this will go live, but the book will be published hopefully by the end of June 2023. So that's where we are right now. And I spent the last year of my life writing the book, editing, getting it out, like doing all of the behind the scenes. And it was interesting. A lot of people ask me if I've always had the dream of writing a book, and the answer is no. I haven't grown up thinking I would write a book. I've never really considered myself a writer. But once I started my own business back in 2017, I started consuming so many books and podcasts that I realized how helpful they are for someone, especially starting at their kitchen table and they don't have the answers. Like I'm sitting there Googling and just buying all the books, listening to all the podcasts. And so I thought, maybe one day I'll start a podcast. And sure enough, I did that in 2019 and had a great time. I love it. You love podcasting. I love podcasting. It's so fun to connect with people. And so along the way, I met a ton of people. I've interviewed a ton of people, and two people ended up coming through my podcast at different times. And they went through a writing program that just sounded like it fit exactly what I needed. You know, we all need something different when we're taking on a project that we have no idea what we're doing, which is what I was doing with writing a book. And this program, it really felt like it was the right fit. So I started going through that program last year, and I didn't know what book I was going to write. I just thought, you know, I've thought about it. This feels like the right time. And so I just started writing. And the program really helps you figure out what you want to write. And my experience and background before I started my business is in marketing. And so for the longest time, I was a marketing coach. And I thought, oh, I'll write a book about marketing. That's probably what I'll do. It just made sense. And it ended up not being that at all. I started writing this book, and through a series of things happening in my life, I just thought, what is the book that I wish I had when I was starting? And the book I wish I had when I was starting was more about tapping into who I am as an entrepreneur as I'm stepping into this role, and more less about marketing because you can figure out marketing. That's a little bit easier and quite frankly better to learn from digital courses and coaching, that sort of thing, because marketing, it doesn't, the fundamentals don't change, but the nuances do, versus a book is going to be outdated, right? So, really, what I thought was, how would I tell someone, like, this is how you build a strong foundation? And as I was writing, I realized how much of it was confidence within ourselves. And so, as I was writing one of the chapters, I was writing to the person reading it and saying, why not you? Why not you? Why not right now? And why not on your terms? And that ended up being the title of the book, which is really fun.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Why not you? And it just really gets at that confidence. And so throughout the book, are you telling people how to develop that confidence? Are you just setting the scene for your journey with confidence? Tell us a little bit
Mhm.
more about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And what I like to say is that I don't give anyone confidence. I believe that we all have confidence in ourselves, but it gets buried throughout our life for whatever reason in different circumstances. What we really need is courage. We need courage to move through the fear because there's so much of it, especially when we're starting our business or starting a podcast or writing a book or whatever it is that the person is doing in their life. The confidence is there. If you think about yourself as a kid, you know, and you just put on that wacky outfit and did whatever you wanted because you were confident until someone made fun of you or whatever the case is. And we start to bury that confidence. So I believe it's there. I don't give anyone confidence. I think everyone has it. I think we can sharpen it. I think we can develop it, but I do believe the seed is there. And so we have to use our courage to get through it. And so that's really what it is, inside this book. And what I walk people through is creating what I call your you promise, your Y.O.U promise, that you're promising yourself. And this is the framework that entrepreneurs, specifically accidental entrepreneurs, can use no matter what happens in their business. Because chances are things are going to change. When I first started my business, I was doing one thing and then I moved to doing something else and now I'm doing something else. but I am the hub, the center of all of this. And so I wish that I had this Y.O.U promise of, I promise myself that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay true to myself. And I've now named my podcast. I changed the name of the podcast along the way to being the Unapologetic Entrepreneur. So really in this book, my intention was to move from accidental to unapologetic.
Oh, I like that a lot. There we
Hmm.
go. There we go. And so using courage to push through fear and ultimately develop confidence by kind of just finding it again, not like growing
Hmm.
it from scratch, but the idea
Right.
that it's already there, you're kind of digging it up by moving through that fear. Is that right?
Hmm. Yeah, you've said it wonderfully. And you know, as you know, you can think back in times in your life and you think when you were able to push through the fear of doing something. Specifically, I'm talking about in business. Of course, there's things in our life that when we're fearful, you don't have to just push through fear all the time. Like there's times when that's not appropriate. But usually in our business, we're scared of saying something because of what, our previous boss is going to see online and say it or think or whatever. And we're so worried about that, about what other people are going to say, do, think, or even just maybe think. We don't even know. And we'll worry about that. But if you look back on a time when you've pushed through that fear and you've done it, most of the time, like all things worked out just fine. And no one did say anything, and you became stronger because of it. I know I can say that so many times. And I talk about failure a lot. I think the idea in entrepreneurship, the thing that differentiates someone who is more successful on paper. I think success is something everyone gets to define on their own terms. But if you looked at something at face value and typically speaking, successful or not successful, it's the people who fail fast
Yeah.
on purpose. Like they're trying to get through to like find the failure, find the fault so that they can continue to move through that and actually find the success on the other side. And so we have to have an element, a huge element of courage to do that. And as we do that, we grow that confidence and we can show up in a more confident way.
Mm. Yeah. Fail fast and then fail forward, right? Like from
Yeah.
failing.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Amanda, tell us a little bit more about your motivation. What really gets you up and keeps you going every day?
People ask me this all the time, and I feel very, very lucky. And I like to always bring this to the top of the conversation that I happen to have the gift of being extremely motivated and driven when I have a very strong why. So I can motivate myself. I can really push forward, and I say all of that not to be braggy about it, because I think that there's a benefit to so many different characteristics. And what we have to do is we have to find what our gifts are. And one of the gifts I have is being extremely focused and extremely driven on something. So my motivation really comes from if I want to do something and I know what my strong why is, I can push through and do it. Not saying it happens easily, but I can really follow through with a project, which is how I ended up doing what I do now is coaching people, because that's not the gift that everyone has. So that's how I really stay motivated, is that strong, really strong why.
I gotcha. And does that strong why, is it one strong why that you're going towards and it's like,
Mm.
this is where I'm going for the end of your life, or does it vary based on the season of life?
Yeah, I love that you said season of life. I say the same phrase all the time. That's so wonderful. I don't hear very many people say that. So I would say that it changes with the season of life. So one of the things that I realized, I promise I'll come back to that answer. But one of the things I realized as I was writing this book is that I was treating my definition of success, which I had never sat down and thought about before this whole process of writing a book. It was really in 2021 that this journey really started. It was before the book, but I realized all of a sudden I had never defined success on my own terms. Maybe you haven't either. I've actually never interviewed anyone who has written the phrase Like, success to me means this. Like, I interviewed hundreds of people on this topic between my podcast and the book interviews, and not one single person had done it. So it was really interesting. It's not very typical. But what I realized was that I was treating my goals as the measurement of success, which, if you think about it, is always moving the marker down the road,
Yep.
because goals are awesome and I'll always set goals. So there's always something I'm working towards because that's part of my personality. I think goals are great, definitely good for business. And you got to think about those. But if they're the measurement of success, you're never going to feel successful because you're always trying to work towards something. And that was a wake up call for me that took me on the journey of interviewing a ton of people, and then turned it into, it ended up becoming the start of the book. And so the reason I bring this up is because, had you asked me that question in 2021, I would have said it's always changing. Like 100%, I would have said it's always changing. The version of Amanda today, I have a definition of success that I strive for every day. It's a feeling. It's not a measurement. It's a feeling. I don't know how to measure a feeling, so maybe it's a measurement. But I strive for a specific thing every day, which would be the ultimate why, I would say. So there is kind of an umbrella. And then I have other things that change with the season, because I do like to strive for goals. I think a lot of high achieving, driven people, like, that are listening to your podcast, because they're, looking at living the dream. And, we have to remember that goals are great, but we have to find a way to find it every day. I have such a passion for sharing that now, because otherwise we're just chasing all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. And it's true. I haven't ever written down my version of success. Is like, I've written down the goals and I've written down the
Right.
dreams and like vivid vision statements and what I want my life
Yes.
to look like in detail. But then it's like, similar to what you're saying, I think Alex Hormozy said this a while back and it just didn't sit right with me. But he was like, goals are like the contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you achieve the
Oh.
goal. And the reason that
Mm.
statement was valid for so many people is because they weren't applying what you just said of like,
Mhm.
they're making their goals the measurement of success as opposed to something else the measurement of success. And so then when you switch the measurement, you can track the feeling you're having every day on the
Mhm.
way to your goals, which then helps you enjoy the process, which is a
Yes.
simple point of wisdom that a lot of people have before us, right? Enjoy the process. And so I really like that. Tell us
Mhm.
about what feeling, like how you describe the feeling you're going after, and then how you go about prioritizing that feeling every day, because it's easy to
Mhm.
wake up, be human, and be like, "Yeah, I don't really want to record this podcast today at 7 a.m." Or, "Yeah, I don't
Right.
really want to go to work or do this client call or do these follow-ups or whatever, post this content." And so, or have this hard conversation with my spouse or kids or family,
Right.
right? So, tell us about how you prioritize that feeling in the middle of life popping up.
Mhm. Well, first you have to define it,
Mhm.
which was really hard for me. That was a very difficult task, because I didn't have anything to go off of. No one had ever said this to me before. I have this whole story that, like, I had this moment in the grocery store parking lot where I realized, oh my gosh, I was treating goals as the same as the measurement of my success. And I sat there for 30 minutes before I went into the dang grocery store. Like, I mean, I was just having this moment. And from that moment till about a year down the road, I did not have a definition of success. I just couldn't nail it down. I couldn't figure it out. And what I was doing along the way was I was interviewing people on the podcast. So all of 2022, when I interviewed people, I asked them about success stories and how does it feel, all of these things. Now, no one knew I was doing this journey of trying to define success of my own. I was just highlighting people's success stories on the podcast, which is fun anyway.
Yeah.
And so I go down this path, and I ended up writing my definition of success through a process that I created. So if someone's listening right now and is like, oh my gosh, I want to do this, like, I'll walk you through the process right now. But I do have, if it's okay to say this, I have a free PDF on my website that walks you through the process, because it's very, very difficult to do listening to a podcast, so it's there. You can link it in the show notes. I'll send you the link.
Absolutely.
But anyways, you can do this in 20 minutes and it's remarkable. Like, I've taught this workshop now tons of times, and it's remarkable how quickly it happens versus my 1 year. So, anyways, here's how I suggest defining it. And then what you do every day is you write it in the morning and start your day with that sentence. And that helps so much. It's remarkable how it can, because you ask the question of how do you do that with life, like throwing things at you every day. And the answer is start the day with it, because it's really helpful to do that. And also give yourself tons of grace, because there's a 0% chance you're going to do it every day.
Yeah.
So would you like me to share really quick the
Yes,
process?
please.
Okay,
Yeah.
because it's remarkably simple, not easy, but simple. So the first thing I encourage people to do is to take a moment and think about 5 things you want with no judgment. This can be, I want $10,000 in revenue this month. I want a pool in my backyard. I want more social media followers. These are examples that are actually in that PDF, because I want you to see, like, it's life, it's business, it's all the things, like, no judgment at all. What do you want? And then write those 5 things down, just bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I want you to finish the sentence for each of those things. I want blank so that blank. Because here's the thing that I realized as I interviewed all of these people. I asked them, how do you define success? And really I started asking the question, what does success feel like for you? And that changed the game when I started asking that. And no one had an answer. They had a long pause after I asked the question. They thought about it. And then they said something. And inevitably in the sentence, because I would just let them talk, as they were talking, they would say, I want, success to me is $50,000 a year in my business, or $1 million in my business every year, or whatever, so that I can travel with my spouse, so that I can spend time with my kids, so that I can fulfill this dream, blah, blah, blah. What I realized is that there's always a so that. And that is where the magic comes in. So if you write these 5 things, I want blank, so that blank. After the so that, you find more about what success means to you, because the number is important. That helps you hit that goal, right? That's the revenue goal. That's the whatever it is. But it's the feeling that you're really going for. But you have to ask yourself what that is. Because the best example of this is if you'd say, I want to take a trip with my partner. And people would say that, and they go on the trip and they come back, everything's the same. They didn't really even enjoy the trip. Like, they had some fun times, but it was not that big. It wasn't like they came back rejuvenated in their relationship. And that's the reason, is because they didn't know the so that. I want to take a trip with my partner so that we can spend quality time together.
Mm.
And so you prioritize that once you know what it is. And so that question that you asked of how do you do this every day, what I realized with my definition of success, and I'm happy to share it if you'd like me to, but again, it doesn't matter what mine is, right? It matters what everyone else's is, and you'll write it for yourself. But what you realize is the feelings that you want to go for, and then you write your definition of success. So step 1 is the 5 things. Step 2 is the so that sentence. Step 3 is drafting your definition of success. Just write it. It can be 3 sentences long. It can be a paragraph long. It can be a sentence long. Whatever it is, write success to me means blank, so that blank. Like, you just put it together. Don't overthink it. Just go for it. And then you write it every day for 30 days, and you tweak it as you want to, because you're going to change it a lot in 30 days. And then by the end of 30 days, you'll get pretty clear on what your definition of success is in this season. And it's okay if it changes next season. Because if you think about 16-year-old self versus 80-year-old self, probably going to have a different sentence.
For sure. For sure. Well, do you mind
Mhm.
sharing yours? I would love to
I
hear.
don't at all. Everyone always wants to know, and I almost didn't put it in the book, and the editor was like, "You have to put it in the book. You're gonna like, you can't leave this out." And I was like, "But it's gonna change." And she was like, "You have to. There's no way." So I like to say that currently success means to me being present in my life, content with what I have, and challenging myself in new ways.
Mm,
Because being present is very, very hard for someone who's always thinking about the future. I'm always thinking, what does tomorrow look like? What does the next year of my business look like? Where are we going to travel next year? I'm always thinking about the future. So being present is really difficult for me. But what I found is that when I feel like, oh my gosh, that feeling of success, like, there's a specific day that I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so successful today. And it was a day that I worked and I got my to do list done, the most important things on my to do list. But I also went and hung out with a friend out back on her back patio, had a glass of wine and some cheese and crackers, and we just talked in the middle of the day. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. I love working. I don't necessarily not want to work right now. I love working. I love what I do. I love challenging myself and getting things done and following through on projects, but being present with the people that I enjoy being around is when I really feel successful. And when I also feel content with what I have financially, emotionally, all of those things, when I can feel settled and content, all of that leads to a successful feeling.
mm. So present, content with what you have, and then always challenging yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. Because what I realized is if I if I kept it at present and content, like that would be a beautiful sentence. That would be a beautiful sentence. It would not be Amanda.
Yeah.
Amanda wants a challenge and wants to say, "Can I do this? Yeah, I can. I can push myself to do this and to try." And I've learned that about myself, over the years. And so if I wasn't doing that, I would be bored. I would not feel successful. In this season of my life, I really enjoy doing that. And not that I want all days to feel challenging, but I like to challenge myself. So that I really needed to add that in. Again, it's personal. So everyone else's is going to be very, very different. Doesn't have to be like mine, but that works for me.
Yeah. I love it. Well, awesome. Let's go ahead and jump into dreams and goals then. We
Yeah.
hear about kind of what success is to you, the umbrella term, but what are some of your dreams and goals right now, vision for your life and your business?
Yeah, when I started my business in 2017, I had this dream that I still have. And I would love to be able to be providing in a way financially for our family that my husband could walk away from his job and there would be no worries. Now, like that's going to take some time. It's not like it's going to be like on the vision board happening this year. It's definitely one of those things, but it's always been something that I was like, "You know what? He gave me this gift of time to figure out to start my own business and to do that, and I hope I'm able to do that." I don't know if he'll ever want to leave his job. He's very happy with what he's doing, but to have that feeling, again, it goes back to that feeling that if he just felt like walking away, he could. So
Mhm.
that is something that keeps me going all the time, and I really hope to be able to be at that level with my company one day, which would be really cool.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Any other dreams and goals that you want to add on?
I feel like I was thinking about this and I wanted to say something so different than everyone else, but everyone says travel, but I really do want to travel. So, I mean, I'm going to say it anyway, that I would like to travel. We've been in a different season of life that hasn't been a priority, but I would love to do that. Michael and my husband, Michael and I haven't had the opportunity to travel a ton in our relationship, but I hope to be able to do that in the next few years.
Where would you guys go? Where top three places?
Ooh, that's good. We actually started making a list because we don't know where we want to live. We live in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma right now. But so I grew up in Florida. Give you the quick backstory here. I grew up in Florida, moved to Oklahoma, found a job here after grad school, and didn't think I would stay here very long. Like that wasn't really the plan, but I found a job. So I just stayed here for a little bit. And the plan was not to date anyone. And then I met my husband and we started dating. And again, I was just like, it's just a date. I probably won't marry him, you know? And sure enough, did.
Yep.
And he has 2 kids. And so he said, if you'll stay here until they're done with school, we can go anywhere you want. And so that's the whole season of life thing. So in 2025, we get to decide where we're going to go. And so our plan is to travel for a little bit and kind of bounce around and see where we want to go. So we just started making our list. And I guess it's 2 different lists because we would travel a whole bunch of places. I think if we were just to travel, not to see where we would live, we'd probably go to London first. He's been there, I have not. We've talked about it a lot. Um, and I would want to go like while we're over there. I'd probably want to make that a bigger trip
Yep.
and bounce around because once you're over there in Europe, it's like you can kind of move around.
Uh-huh.
So I'd want to stay over there a little bit. We actually went to Costa Rica last year and it was wonderful. We'd go back. We'd probably go back there. But locally, we're looking at like, domestic, like if we want to live places. So we're looking at like North Carolina.
Ooh.
Uh, yeah, Charlotte.
Uh,
Charlotte has been at the top of the list for a while.
yeah.
So yeah, we don't know.
I went to school in North Carolina,
Ah, where?
30 minutes north of Charlotte, actually.
Okay, so you're gonna have to tell me all the places when I finally get to go. We're actually thinking of like starting to do some like smaller trips now for like a week or two because I can work from wherever and so can he. And so we're thinking like we should just go book an Airbnb for a week or two, and because we could do that, you know. Um, so we might be going to Charlotte sooner rather than later, is what I'm saying. So you'll get an email from me asking you for places.
There we go. There we go. Well, awesome. I think Charlotte's a cool place. I'm
Hmm.
honestly a bigger fan of Austin,
You
Texas.
are okay. So Austin's on there, but it is expensive.
It is expensive.
And I
Yes.
don't know, like, I mean, Tulsa's really affordable.
Hmm.
We actually really enjoy Tulsa. It's not a bad place to live at all. I just want to explore and see if we want to move somewhere else. We could end up here, who knows? But yeah, I've checked out Austin because I thought it would be cool, but it's pretty pricey.
It is. There's
There's
like
a
a
lot of
pretty,
people moving there.
uh-huh. There's a pretty average house just kind of right next. We have an apartment, but an average house, like 1.4 million.
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
regular 3-2
Yes.
in the right location, 1.4 million. It's like, man,
Yeah. I know. There was someone I met along the way in my journey of entrepreneurship, and she said that she bought a house in Austin a long time ago, like many, 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 many years ago. So it was very affordable. And she recently sold it and moved somewhere else. And I mean, the profit that she made on her house is unreal.
yeah, yeah.
So clearly it's changing because I think a lot of people are moving into Austin. I've definitely heard a lot more about it in the last few years, but it seems like a fun place to live for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It is a good time for sure. Um, well, awesome. Any other dreams and goals? So we got providing in a way financially where you
Hmm.
could retire your husband, traveling
Hmm.
to London, Costa Rica, and then domestically to Charlotte and other spots to figure out where to live.
Hmm.
And yeah, any others you want to add?
You know, those are the only ones right now. I mean, I could put business ones on there all the time. I mean, I've always got goals for my business, but um, you know, getting this book out into the world is a pretty big one, and so I'm pretty focused on that right now
Mhm.
and getting that out and who knows what comes next after that.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay, getting the book out and we'll just leave it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, what are the top 1 to 2? Actually, before we move on to that question,
Hmm.
providing in a way financially that you can retire your husband, do you feel comfortable getting into the specifics of that? Like what numbers you need to hit and how you need to hit them, or would you rather go to the next questions?
Um,
Both are fine.
I think I'd rather not, just because I feel like that's, what I've really done in entrepreneurship, and feel free to share this. This is like, you know, is, I ended up starting this business and I put a boundary in place early on of I'm starting this business and becoming and stepping into this role of being a personal brand, which is really an interesting thing. It wasn't what I really thought was going to happen when I started my business. I thought I would be a marketing consultant for corporations,
Mhm.
not really in the public eye, right? Turns out this is more of the path for me, and I'm very happy doing it. However, my husband and stepkids and family, none of them signed up for that. And so I've really tried to have that balance of telling everyone I have a husband, I have stepkids, I have family members, but I don't really talk about their stuff as much. So um that's why I say that, because I really am an open book about business stuff.
Yeah,
And so that's been kind of the tough part, but you know, multiple six figures. I would say like that's where I would be more comfortable. And I would say also like we have to think about in a business, I don't take home all of the money,
yeah,
right? So you have to look at a percentage. So therefore it'd have to be even higher, right? So like you have to do some math there. But yeah.
I got you. I got you. So multiple six figures profit
Mhm.
take home is
Right.
where you need to be.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, what are the top 1 to 2 skills that are required to kind of make this dream life come true that you need to develop right now?
Mhm. I think that connection to to the why, and always being connected to that is going to be the thing that holds the like glue that holds everything together. Because I truly believe I've coached so many people, and I've seen this in my own business and life, that if you don't have that strong connection to your why, it's so much easier to give up on it. It's
Yeah,
just so much easier. So that strong connection would be the thing to hold on to for me. And you said 1 to 2. I would say that's the biggest one, and then it's just really understanding, like, knowing what that specific number is, working towards it, making smart decisions along the way, and also, like, I don't put a time limit on that. That would be lovely if I hit it tomorrow, but that's not likely to happen, and I've noticed that in business, this gets a little woo-woo, and I kind of like balance data and heart, and so woo woo comes in there a little bit, but it's like if you're really like holding on to a specific thing really, really tightly, like I have to hit this number this month, it doesn't seem to work out as well. I'm
yeah,
like the feelings are they're a struggle. The marketing ends up being funky on the back end. But if you can just say like I'm doing the best I can, like working really hard, taking the actions, doing the things, but not tying so close to like, I have to have this right now or else, right? Like
yeah,
it'll go down in flames.
yeah. I gotcha. I think, that is woo woo a little bit, but not really.
Right. It's,
Because,
it,
oh,
it
we're,
shows up like it's interesting how it shows up, right? Of like, if you're really like, I don't even know what word to use. Like if you're like, really attached
yeah,
to that specific thing, it like, you can tell when someone feels desperate in their business and you're like, "I cannot
yeah.
I don't want a part of that. I don't know what it is." So, yeah, I'm glad you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I get you. And I've thought about it a little bit. And to me, it comes down to when you're really attached to something and when you really need it now, like it's called commission breath. If you're in
Mm,
sales or you're a realtor or something like that, it's really because uh, you're desperate and you're desperate because you believe that you don't have it. And so
mm,
what's really interesting about this is it does get a little woo-woo, but when you're treating yourself as a person who doesn't have it, it's very hard to get it.
mm. Yeah,
And
yeah.
that does get a little woo-woo, but then when you take a step back from the woo-woo-ness of it, it's like you're tying a lot of your reality to the fact that you don't have it right now.
Mhm. Right.
And so there's a lot of fear around change, and your whole reality would change if you got it.
Mm,
And so there's some
mm.
it does get a little woo-woo, but it's also really practical if you just think
Yeah,
about it from a very logical standpoint.
yeah.
But
I
yeah,
totally agree with that. Yeah, you said it well.
I'm glad you brought that up because it is
Mhm.
important. But cool.
Yeah.
So connection to the why is a skill,
Hmm.
and then kind of crystal clear clarity on the numbers, what you need to do,
Yeah.
brace for yourself through the process.
Yeah. And then taking the action. You got to do the work.
Yeah, well, that's actually the next question. What are the what are the highest impact daily actions that are going to tick the needle forward towards your dreams and goals right now?
Hmm. So this is one of those things that, like, it's another gift of mine. It's really, like I was saying, it really focuses on, like, I'm very driven, I'm very focused. And so very tactically, I do something every single day that is very, very helpful. And I use a project management system. So every day when I show up to work, like, I don't ever, ever, ever have to wonder, what should I do today? It's already outlined. I don't ever show up to a day unprepared. And a lot of people feel like that's too structured, and I believe that everyone needs to find their balance. But for me, I mean, that is how people ask me all the time, how in the world do you get all of this done? Or it's not about quantity, but how did you write that book and run a business? And at the same time, I was also being a caregiver for a family member. Like, how did you do that? And I was like, I managed my time,
Yeah.
you know? And it wasn't easy, but I never show up unprepared for the day. There's always a list, there's always something, and I always know what's most important, because there's always going to be things on the list that we don't get to. I think that's
Mhm.
just a reality. And so, very tactically, that's what that looks like for me is when something pops into my mind. Because again, people ask me this all the time. They're like, but how do you do that? If something pops into my mind, I'm like, oh, I need to apply to be on Timmy's podcast. I love his podcast. I need to go do that. I don't just think that and hope it happens one day. Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
I put it in a task management system for a specific day. It may be 3 weeks from now, but it'll pop up that day and I'll be applying for your podcast,
Yeah.
right? Like, we have to think about it and actually take the action.
Yeah. I love it. So never showing up to a day unprepared, really just
Hmm.
planning out all the little, like we have little stuff that pops up in our head, like, oh, we need to do that.
Hmm.
Oh, we need, and just
Hmm.
putting it on there.
And just getting it assigned, because again, that thought could pop into my mind because I'm listening to your podcast on a walk, right? I go on a walk, which are great for me. I get away from my desk, right? Go on a walk and I think, oh, I need to apply for his podcast, to be a guest on his podcast. And that will hang in our mind until we do it. But if we put it in a task management system and I assign it to 2 weeks from now or 3 days from now or whatever I decide, it's out of my mind. I don't have to
Mhm.
think about that anymore today because I've already told myself I'm going to do that next Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And what character trait do you most need to develop right now to make your dream life come
Mm.
true?
This one's so easy. Patience. I
Mhm.
am the least patient person. Gosh, it is. I try every day. That's the being present, being content, as you can tell, like all of these things.
Uh-huh.
Patience is something I work on every single day. And I'm learning a very tough life lesson with publishing this book, that the timeline is completely out of my control. That's
Yeah.
why I said, "Oh, it should be out by the end of June, but the printer is backed up. There's a lot of things that are happening to change the date of what's happening, and I can't do anything about it." And
Yeah.
that is uncomfortable. So that patience with, like, well, I mean, it's going to come out. The book is done. Like, it is going to come out. But I mean, I have to remind myself every day, if it happens in July, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
Not really that much.
Yeah.
I might get some emails,
Mhm.
but that's about it.
No, I gotcha. Patience is such a strange character trait because it's weird to think about being impatient. Like it makes sense to all of us because we are not all of us are impatient, but about
Right.
99% of the population is pretty impatient. But when you take it back to that, like being present and being content with where you are, I feel like a lot of impatience just comes from, you're not present, you're not content, and you're trying to get to
Right.
that place of being present and content. And you're saying, oh, I need something in the future. And so it has you spinning your wheels right now. And it's such a weird, a weird thing. Like when I started
Hmm.
trying to define patience in my head, I couldn't define it without that being present, being content, or like being
Hmm.
anxious about the future. Like patience itself didn't have a definition to me. It was more
Right.
patience was the act of either being present or the lack of being present
Hmm.
because I just wasn't okay with my emotion in the moment. And that's why I was so impatient. I wanted to get to a better emotional spot.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you
It's,
just, you're speaking the truth today.
especially because when stuff gets dangerous, like when you're actually in danger,
Mm,
it gets pretty clear what you need
yeah.
to do in that moment. And we're typically pretty quick to act. But when we're
Yeah.
not actually in danger, that's when the impatience and the lack of
Mhm.
contentment comes into play. And we could just sit there because there's no real danger in the moment. And so we
Right.
just kind of sit there ruminating. Uh,
Mm. That's a really good thought to remember of like there when we are having that moment of impatience where we can't act, the danger really isn't there. Because if there was danger, we would be acting.
yep.
I'm going to remember that so much, Timmy. Thank you.
Of course. Happy to help. Happy to help. Well, awesome. What if there were one or two people you could meet right now? It could be a specific person or a type of person, and they'd really
Hmm.
help you take that next step towards your dreams and goals. Who would they be, and how would they help you?
Mm. So, gosh, I feel like there's a list of people, right? Like, but you asked for one or two. One person who I've really seen kind of pop up in an industry that I think I am being drawn to a little bit more is Mel Robbins. So she really talks in the motivational speaking realm, which when I started writing this book, I actually, with my book coach, I had a moment on a call where I said, "Oh my gosh, Eric, am I trying to be a motivational speaker? Like, have I just uncovered this about myself?" And he was like, "Maybe, maybe." And it was this interesting moment. And ever since then, I've just kind of played around with that idea. And I don't know really what that means. But I've been very drawn to how she has shown up in in the way like also Brene Brown fits into that as well. And those two women have just kind of sparked something within me that I had never really thought about. But I would also say, like, if I would love to meet Oprah. I don't know anyone who wouldn't want to meet Oprah, but like
Yeah,
but you asked me how they would help me, and so I went with Mel Robbins and Brene Brown first because they are in a space that I'm very curious about, so I would have a lot of questions to just
yeah,
soak up. Oprah, I would just be in awe. I might pass out, I'm not sure. I just think it would be so cool to meet her, and I think I maybe hopefully I would ask a lot of questions and learn. I know I would take a picture.
there we go. I love it. So Mel Robbins, Brene Brown,
Yeah.
and Oprah.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
Mhm.
Well, now we're gonna jump through our thriving three real quick, and then we got one last section. So first, what's your favorite book, movie, or podcast? Pick one.
So I was thinking about this because you ask everyone this, and I was like, oh gosh, what am I going to say? And really, the answer is Essentialism. It's a book by Greg McCowan and McEwen. McEwen. I always say his name wrong. Sorry, Greg, if I ever meet you. Gosh. But I read his book, Essentialism, every year, which is really interesting. I've read it so many times. And the reason I read it is because I have to be reminded to focus on one thing versus a million things. I get excited about different things. I love trying new things, but to focus on something, which I really did in writing the book, that was a very clear example of me focusing on one thing. But I read his book every year, so much so that I think I'm going to have to buy a new one. It's like on the shelf right here. But the pages are falling out because I've read it and it's like coming apart. So I think I'll actually have to buy a new one next
There
year.
we go. There we go. A lot of people, not a lot of people. I say, let me go. A lot of Instagram reels
Mm,
will tell me
yes,
about instead of reading like one book a week or two books a week or whatever, which is great. If you're doing that, you should keep it up.
that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but also reading one really great book like 20 times
Hmm.
might get you further along if that's the kind of bottleneck in your life right now.
Yeah.
If you read that book and you really get that information in
Hmm.
there. So I like that you read that book so much.
Yeah, I've read it. I need to try and interview him at some point. Like they'll hopefully I'll be able to get him on the podcast one day. But because I've read it so many times, I really do. I basically read it at the beginning of every year to remind myself because it's such a great book. I mean, everything he says is like so true and so obvious, right? Like, but you don't think about it. It's focus on one thing and you'll make more progress. Like it
Yeah.
just makes sense. But I have to read it every single year.
Hmm. Yeah, I gotcha. And what's one way you like to take care of yourself?
Oh, this one's a fun one for me. So I started something about 3 years ago, and it's a rule that I will move my body 10 minutes a day.
Mm,
That is the rule. And I would say at least 10 minutes a day. And so every single day, like I'm probably at like a 97% rate or something. Like there's been a few days where like I got sick, like really, really sick that I couldn't do the things, but I made that I was on a walk one day and I was like, it was actually my birthday. And I said to myself, I wonder if I can hold myself accountable to something for an entire year. I'm going to
mm.
try and move my body for 10 minutes a day, at least. Maybe if I do more, great, but at least 10 minutes a day. And I did it and it was remarkable. And so it was really cool. And why I say it takes care of me, it's one way I take care of myself is because I have to try and fit it in every day. Most of the time it's in the morning. So today did yoga before we have this podcast interview. And that's most of the time is something gentle movement in the morning and hopefully a walk in the afternoon. So as you can see, like it's usually more than 10 minutes, but there's been days where I was at a hospital with a friend or a family member or something and I'm sitting there all day and I would walk the halls for 10 minutes and come back or
Yeah.
like I found ways to do it. And so for at least 10 minutes every day, I am silent with myself or listening to a podcast or, taking care of myself in that way.
I love it. And I like how it's the 10 minutes because
Hmm.
it's hard pressed to like it feels like an hour. It'd be much easier to do.
Right.
But if it's
Oh,
10 minutes,
yes. And I don't know the math off the top of my head, but I did it because I was like, is this really going to help my body like physically? I did the math. Feel free to do it afterwards because I cannot do it in my head. But if you do 10 minutes every day for the entire year, and add that up. I want to say it's like 3,000 something. And then I did like if I went to one workout class for 1 hour, one time a week, because that's very typical for a lot of people to go to like 1 hour class once a week. It's a lot less minutes.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that math shocked me because I was like, And here's the deal. Most of the time it's more than 10 minutes. I get on a walk and I'm like, ooh, I want to walk more.
Yep.
I'll do yoga for longer. Like I'm not saying it's only 10 minutes, but it's at least 10 minutes. There are days where I'm like looking at the watch. Did I hit 10 minutes? Okay, I'm done. Right? Like there are days of that for sure.
Yeah, I gotcha. And yeah, I think you probably have there was a surplus of like 1,000 something minutes or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it really worked out. When I saw that math, I was like, "Oh my gosh."
yeah,
And like you said, it's very doable. That was the thing that I realized is most of the time, like if you don't have 10 minutes, I won't even say most of the time. I would say, dear friend listening, if you do not have 10 minutes, I would take an inventory
yeah,
of what the heck is going on. Because something like usually we're wasting time with that 10 minutes, like scrolling on Instagram,
yep.
uh, whatever. Like, I'm not saying that that's bad. Scrolling on Instagram isn't bad, but you could probably cut out 10 minutes or wake up 10 minutes earlier or stay up 10 minutes later or whatever. It's 10 minutes. Like, we can usually do this, and it's remarkable how impactful it's been in my life.
There we go. There we go. Well, if there was one action step you could take right now to meet either Mel Robbins, Brene Brown, or
Mhm.
Oprah, what would that action step be?
I always like to say that the answer is no unless I ask.
Mm,
So you have identified, you've helped me identify today that I have not asked any of those three women anything. So I can reach out and say, do you want to be a guest on my podcast? Ask them some sort of a question because you never know. I did ask to interview Mel Robbins for my book. And here's the cool part. I got a really nice response. It
Yeah.
was a no, but it was a very kind response from one of our team members. And I thought, that's such a refreshing thing. And so I'll try again.
Yeah. There we go. I love it. Reaching out. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Final series of questions here, all about limiting beliefs and abundant beliefs and stuff. And we'll try to
Mm-hmm.
get you through here in 3 minutes.
Okay, we
Uh,
can do it.
what is one limiting belief that continues to pop up in your life, if any?
I always have them. I feel like it always happens. So I would say I'm not whatever enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not cool enough. I don't know. Like I'm
Cool
not
enough.
whatever enough.
Yeah. I gotcha. I gotcha. And where's that come from for you? Did it start in childhood? Did you get it in adulthood, like college?
I'd say all of the above. It was probably as a kid, it wasn't, I'm not cool enough. In college, I'm not smart enough. In entrepreneurship or in the corporate world, I'm not old enough, right? When I was first in there, entrepreneurship, I'm not experienced enough. I've never done this before, whatever it is.
Do you have any actions or inactions, limiting actions or inactions that reinforce this limiting belief?
I have found that if I am consuming too much information from other people,
Mm,
that it usually does that. So it's usually a pause on social media for a hot second when I realize that I'm thinking that.
I gotcha. Okay. And let's see. If you were to change this limiting belief into an abundant phrase
Mm.
that really spoke to your heart in the way you needed to hear it, what would the phrase be?
I would say I am whatever enough, whatever I'm struggling with. And then I would tack on, and that is reinforced by this example. So I would pull from something. So I'm not smart enough, right? I would pull from, I am smart enough. I graduated grad school.
Yeah.
I am smart enough. I figured out that tech issue yesterday.
Yeah.
I would just pull from an example because that helps me remember, oh, I've done it before.
Yeah. I gotcha. And what is your favorite belief about yourself?
It's what we've talked about, a lot of being really driven, I would say. And, I'm going to retract that. That's a really strong one for me. However, I am a great encourager. And that's another thing I would have never said about myself. But after working with so many people, and every single person says, Amanda, you're the best cheerleader. You're the best encourager I've ever had in my corner. That I'll take that compliment every day.
There we go. Well, awesome. Amanda, that's all we got for you. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Timmy, for having me.
Of course. Is there anything else you want to chat about before we sign off?
Oh gosh, thank you for doing the work you do. Thank you for sharing this wonderful podcast. And if anyone would like to find me on the internet, you can go to amandamckinney.com and it's all there.
Sounds good. Well, if you guys are listening to this and you loved what Amanda had to say, make sure to check her out. All the links to do so will be down in the show notes. I believe we mentioned a free PDF
Hmm.
earlier that will also
Yes.
be down in the show notes for you guys to go get. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out.